So around spring of this year, I had the idea to do an anime season's first impression video. It was only about 5 minutes into working on it that I realized the spring season was almost over. Then I made the same mistake with summer, and fall, and winter. So instead, I thought it'd be a good idea to just get it all out of the way at once. I mean, why make a video on all of these when I did just make one? What am I, someone who makes ad revenue? So halfway through a marathon of Red vs. Blue, I said to Matt, I'm gonna do the most masochistic thing I can think of. I'm gonna watch everything that aired this year. Matt didn't respond to it, but I did it anyway, or at least I tried. Really early in, I realized this plan was legitimately not possible, considering all of the shows I hadn't seen previous seasons of, and everything that was just small TV specials that nobody had actually heard of, or didn't care about. So this is how this is gonna go. So I watched at least one or more episodes of everything that started this year, with exceptions for shows that I had already seen the necessary seasons for. There's also a couple exceptions that I made for various reasons, ranging from it just being weird, obscure things that nobody actually heard of and that weren't actually going to be good, not the good kind of obscure that I actually liked. For example, Overlord looks great, but I didn't see Season 2 yet, so obviously I'm not going to talk about Season 3. On the other hand, I really don't think you came here to listen to my groundbreaking new thoughts on whatever this thing is. There are also some shows that I really did want to watch and talk about, like Gundam NT, but I wasn't able to because they aren't available for me to watch legally or otherwise. Besides, I need to keep this video reasonable, otherwise I can't make it to that 10-minute sweet spot for min-mats and the ad revenue that I'm not getting anymore. But with that out of the way, let's start with something nice, slow, and relaxing. This was one of the first I saw this year, and it's a pretty strong start. Maybe I just have a taste for suffering, but this one's gotta be pretty high up there on the list. I know the art style might seem a little off, but it really does work with the tone. The show is surreal, but granted not really in the Evangelion or FLCL or Serial Experiments Lane kind of way. The art style itself is surreal, even if the plot itself is pretty straightforward, all things considered. Faces twist in ways that convey the tone, not trying to show a realistic expression. It cares more about showing the tone than actually making the artwork look good, which sometimes works really well, sometimes it doesn't. Now let me be clear before I say anything else. Here's how you know if you'll like this. Was Berserk too much for you? Yeah. Alright, don't even look at this one. This show is dark. The show is like if someone looked at the end of Evangelion or the eclipse from Berserk and went, yeah, I can go darker than that. At the end of the day, if you liked Berserk, if you liked Evangelion, if you liked Fist of the North Star, some aspect of it probably has some sort of root in this manga, which makes it even more insane that it only just now got a faithful adaptation. I watched the old one, and while it was good for an entirely,
Hey kid, you're a stupid little fucker.
different style of entertainment. No, but really though, this is probably the most depressing, most violent, and most traumatizingly sad anime I've ever seen. I can't even spoil this. If you can think of something bad that could happen, it probably does. And it's the best. If I had more specific categories for which show I like best, this would absolutely be my soundtrack of the year though. Every song fits the tone it's in perfectly. And even just listening to it retrospectively... What did I just say? And even just listening to it retrospectively reminds me of exactly what I was feeling in those scenes. It ranges from a fantastic modern cover of the original 1962 opening to some hype Hotline Miami style synthwave tracks. I really gotta stop including so many rhymes in these, it makes it really hard to read. If you can stomach something absolutely amazing that'll also make you feel like a dead inside husk of a person, yeah, you should watch it. It's really good. Do I even need to say it? This show is amazing. The fact that I've made it this far into it says that it's good. Otherwise, why would I have watched 350 episodes to get here? It makes me sad that it's ending, but I'm also kind of glad in a way. This isn't another Naruto or Bleach. It's not going forever. It was never going to. It's gonna have a good, satisfying conclusion. Right, Sorachi? Right? No, but jokes aside, the show is... It's an experience. It's a long, unpredictable, bizarre ride. There's no characters I don't like in some way, no plot lines that I dislike, and even before it really starts to pick up and get going, it's still a great show. When it's comedic, it's hilarious. When it's serious, it's better than most other shonen are. This is the only show I've ever seen where they tease a plot line for 300 episodes, and the payoff is just as satisfying as you would hope for. Now, it does have its flaws. There are certain arts that go on for way too long, certain dads that get old, and the style of meta humor isn't for everybody. But I still think that everybody who watches anime should give this show a fair shot. Watch it. Boy, we really went from 100 to 0 with this video. I mean, we started out with...
I've made Akira into a devil, and I might have just created the most powerful, ruthless, and brutal devil in this world.
And now we're at... No, but this one's actually alright. I remember back in r/anime's episode discussions and anime IRL's depressing memes, they used to call it Tumphy Camp. I wasn't really sure why at the time. It didn't really seem much different than the usual slice of life anime. Well, at least the usual good ones. It's a calm show. It's a calm, down-to-earth anime about some girl in the wilderness. Sounds boring to read about, but really there's something about this one. When a show doesn't have much to offer in plot, and the characters themselves, while likable, aren't particularly deep, it has to rely much more on other aspects. Eurocamp's characters are pretty shallow, and there is no overarching story, but that doesn't make it bad. In the end, the show isn't trying for deep characters and a long plot. It's trying to convey a feeling of calm, relaxing comfort. The art and music are how it does that. I don't really know what more I can say about it. If you're looking for a good slice of life anime, it's good. It's probably one of the best of this year. If you want something to pick you up when you finish mourning the loss of Gintama or the absolute horror and traumatizing experience of Devilman, give it a shot. It'll get you calmed down before this review gets into the really sad stuff. So yeah, it's a good way to get yourself relaxed, enjoy some nice art and music, and calm down before we move on to some of the stuff that'll kill you emotionally and turn you into a broken husk of a person. Speaking of which... I love this show. You should watch it. Is that good enough? No? Alright, fine. The show feels like it was made for my tastes. Emotionally damaged character who was in a war and had bad stuff happen to them returns to a quieter life and deals with the death of a loved one in the war. Said character coincidentally looks like one of my other favorite fictional characters. The show itself looks beautiful and is animated by probably one of the best animation studios of the decade, aside from maybe Ufotable. But the soundtrack fits nearly every scene perfectly. I listened to it while writing the script. This show looks absolutely beautiful. Look at it. Are you looking at it? Look harder. This show is weirdly perfectly suited to all of my preferences. I'm glad Netflix licensed it because otherwise I would have bought a legal copy after watching this anyway. I wish I listened to this guy when he told me to watch it earlier. Now to talk about the show itself a little bit more, essentially a child soldier gets a job writing letters for people after the war ends, and has to learn to understand things about life. It's sad, but it's sad in a more human kind of way. Devilman was sad in an, oh, Satan's gonna destroy the world and humans are combining with demons and everyone's dead. Violet Evergarden is a human kind of sadness. What I mean by that is that in Devilman you have Akira watching humanity destroy itself. In this you have Violet helping a guy live with the loss of his daughter and eventually learning to deal with the grief, while also suffering from her own issues from what she went through in the war. Akira Fudo is hopeless and bleak. Violet is relatable, and when she actually does make it through and grow as a character, you still feel hopeful for her, and in a way that can even be even more sadder in some scenes. This show really is one of the best of the year. Go see it. Do I need to do this one? I played the PSP game. It was alright. I was just really enjoying talking about Violet Evergarden, and then you hit me with the Fade Extra. Why? It was kind of a bizarre movement system, and the story left a lot to be desired. Why did this get an adaptation? First, I gotta get something out of the way. It's nowhere near the biggest issue, but it's still something that eats at me every time you see it. Nero's design is the most uninspired and boring thing Type Moon has ever put out. Let me elaborate. Light OT Artoria's design is pretty good. It's a classic. You want to make more like it? Sure, made sense. Oti Soji was a weird one, but it's still a pretty unique design. And the character is pretty likable, even though I would have preferred a more accurate one, like maybe something similar to how Attention handled him. I really liked Oti Soji and the entire story about the Shinzendumi. I was a little disappointed that they went with another gender bender for like the 8th time, but I still like this character. Joan of Arc? Great. Always thought she was cool. You know, you kind of got written into a corner in advance by saying that she looked similar to Artoria because of Castor in Fate Zero, but you still came up with an interesting, unique take on her. Good job. Mordred, Artoria's daughter, who's meant to look exactly like Artoria herself. Fantastic design. Even underneath the armor, if you did go a little bit in the fan servicey direction, you still made her look like a rebellious, out-of-control version of Saber. You know, 'cause that's what she is. She's one of the most famous rebels and traitors there is in history. Or historical fiction, I guess, either one. Mordred is a perfect design. Mysterious heroinettes? Well, it's just Saber in a hat and a trad jacket, but to be fair, it was meant to be a joke about the number of characters who look like Saber. Why does Emperor Nero look exactly like Artoria? Why does this Roman Emperor look like King Arthur? Congratulations, you turned the transparency down a little and cut out the back part of the net. Slap an inversion on there and call it a day. It's lazy and boring. Especially since Nero's character isn't exactly that interesting to begin with, at least with not how she's portrayed in Extra. Even aside from that, I just don't like the Extra universe. It feels convoluted. The way the Drail War works made sense in the game because they were making a different type of war that would work for the RPG mechanics, but something about it in this anime just doesn't work as well. It feels weird. The main character is pretty boring, Nero is not that interesting, and aside from that, I just couldn't really get into it. And I'm saying that as someone who still actively plays Grand Order and has seen Zero 4 times. I've played through the visual novel for Stay Night even. I'm no stranger to Type Moon. I just don't like this one. And that's even weirder because it's coming from Shaft. I really like Shaft. I love Monogatari. I even bought the light novels. I don't know. Maybe I was expecting too much, but I don't care about this one. Don't watch this one. Oh, you thought we were getting close to the end of winter? Sorry, we got like 10 shows left. Shotgun round, boys. Here we go. Darling in the France had some fantastic character designs. The animation is really expressive in a way that I found appealing, and all things considered, didn't seem too bad. That said, the story and characters themselves weren't particularly interesting, and I found it a lot weaker coming off of Trigger's other shows. I don't really know if I'd recommend this one or not. It didn't really appeal to me that much, but I did really like the art style and the designs. I've heard it doesn't end up very well though. Pop Team Epic was basically the pinnacle of the animation medium, and we should all just give up. Pack up your stuff, let's go, we're done, it's all downhill from here. Junji Ito Collection was an abomination that should have never been made. Please read Junji Ito, please don't watch this. That said, even though it's a bad adaptation of one of the best horror manga's work, even in this terrible show, some of Ito's own talent and well-done horror can still come through. Please read the source material, don't watch this. Toi wa Amedari no Yu Ni, or After the Rain, was a little bit of a weird premise and an all-in-all pretty decent show. The relationship between the two main characters is portrayed pretty naturally, and the character designs are unique while still looking very realistic. Also, the art style really gets across the mood, and the general tone is very consistent. Emiyachi no Dohan, it wasn't amazing, and it also wasn't terrible. Honestly, it's hard to recommend for or against watching it. It's just a small slice of life anime of Fate Stay Night. You want to see a couple short episodes of the servants living a normal life without having to kill each other? If you want that, it's there. Otherwise, you're not missing anything. You could argue that it's kind of a cash grab, but honestly, I don't think it affected any of the other series, and we're still getting some good Fate anime, so I can't really complain. Beatless was a show that aired. Yeah, that's really all I have to say on that one. And with all that, we've come to the end of winter. It was a long season with some of the best shows of the year, but I'm glad summer had absolutely nothing that I'm going to need to write long paragraphs about.
Ooh, boy.
It's not as good as the original. I think everyone who's heard anything about Steins Gate Zero knows that part. The original was practically a masterpiece to begin with. It was never going to be as good. That's not really an excuse for its own issues, but I do still think it's worth mentioning. It's got plenty of its own issues, and along with some of its strange changes from the visual novel, which I played not long before watching it, and some of the new characters I actively disliked for being included, which I never really felt about anyone in the original, but I still do like it. Because all that said, I don't think it's bad. It's got its flaws and those issues shouldn't be ignored, but I still think it stands out as a worthwhile addition to the canon storyline, and it's fully worth watching. I think the changes in character design are a solid 50-50 division for better and worse. Some of them, like Daru, don't really fit, while others like Mayuri's new outfit look fine. I think if I had to pick a highlight of the show without spoiling anything, it would be the addition of Maho. The new characters are in an odd situation where, again, just like those character designs, it's a solid 50-50 for better and worse. Maho is the best, and it's sad that she never appears in the main timeline from the original, while Tadori is boring and absolutely nothing would be lost if she were cut. Fubuki, was interested, and I feel like it was kind of a waste not to have her be more involved, while Teide, on the other hand, had less personality than the IBM itself did. At least the IBM had a pretty unique design. It's not as good as Steins Gate, but you should still watch it if you've seen the original. I think at the end of the day, without spoiling it, it doesn't add that much to the overall story, which is a little disappointing, and what it does add is pretty unnecessary, but it's still an interesting premise, and I think that the overall plotline is compelling. I think it could have been done a lot better, but I also think it's still worth watching. It's still a very interesting take on these characters in a different situation that we didn't see in the original. I don't think that it was necessary to show us this, but I still really enjoyed seeing it. And I do still think that overall its addition to the canon was worth those extra things we got to see. It's not some rushed, poorly animated mess that only exists to soullessly adapt a popular manga, while also putting as little money into the project as possible in hopes of making the maximum profit. I mean, what studio would do that? I love Tokyo Duel, the universe at least. Tokyo Duel, the original manga and to an extent its first adaptation, are one of the best manga written in the past decade. It's a compelling, interesting, and fresh take on an idea that had already been done. And despite its flaws, it managed to be a fantastic story with characters that I always enjoyed, a great soundtrack, and some really solid fights. It's one of the best shonen ever written. I even wrote my own short stories using the universe's mechanics for ideas, and don't worry, you'll never find those. I spent 3 years creating my own Tajane and Twinkie ideas, writing my own ideas for duels, drawing my own artwork about the manga's characters, and my own thoughts. I say this because it means that I have a personal connection to this series, and that even when it's at its absolute worst, I still have some attachment to it, and can garner some enjoyment from it. So why is that important? Because this show's bad. Okay, let me elaborate. This show's real bad. No, not enough. Alright. The OST and appealing art style are about the only aspects that I can praise. And notice I said art style and not animation. Well, then back to that, don't you worry. The pacing is all over the place, the animation is awful, and I honestly do think that the story of Ri compared to the original is a noticeable step down. And unlike in that original manga, you don't have Ishida's fantastic artwork to get you through the rougher parts of the story. Instead, you've got this. A part of me will always find this entertaining because it's Tokyo Duel, but I can't recommend this to anyone even if you like the original anime. Read the manga, or just squint really hard so you can read the subs but don't have to look at any more of this atrocity than you absolutely have to. For some reason, I actually really enjoy the art style itself. I don't know if it's just the faded out white look that it all has, or the way that it shows the way the Tajane itself is animated, but a nice aesthetic can't stop you from eventually noticing that the animation is actively getting worse the longer this show goes for. Kaneki vs. Jason has consistently been one of my favorite fights in anime. I could do an entire video analyzing why I enjoy this fight, from the music, the build-up from the past 2 episodes of torture, the way the season ends on Kaneki finally accepting his being a duel and cannibalizing a part of Jason. Everything about it is just great. I love this fight. Kaneki vs. Sachi, much worse. And I wish there was an actual last fight to make this a fair comparison. But Grude, you get 10 minutes of walking. which honestly, I still enjoyed Route A. And Route A had a lot of issues. That's underselling it. Route A had major problems, but I still actively enjoyed watching it, and I still got sad at the ending, even though I was reading the manga and knew how much better that one was doing. Kaneki versus Edo. Okay, this should be good, right? I still liked the manga at this point. I was still really into it. I love Kaneki's character. I love watching Edo. I think she's one of my favorite characters. I think Kaneki and Edo are some of my favorite characters ever written. This fight is the absolute worst. This is painful. This actively hurts to death through. I wish I didn't watch this. This is terrible. Just read the manga. The manga isn't perfect. It has its issues, but it's still miles ahead of what's happening in the re-anime. Also, the opening songs are both really good. Fight me. Man, we're really desecrating everything that I enjoy this year, huh? Okay, it's not actually that bad. It's a better adaptation than Re, to be fair. But coming off of the beautifully animated Persona 3 adaptation,
このままだとみんな死ぬよ死ぬ死ぬ受け入れるのかいペルソナ
and the absolutely incredible Persona 4 adaptation,
You suck.
it still feels lacking. Persona 5 is one of the best games of last year, probably one of the best RPGs of all time, and its great story and characters are enjoyable even in an adaptation like this one. The story and characters are fantastic because the game they're from is incredible. The adaptation itself is what feels a little soulless. The pacing is all over the place and a lot of things don't seem as clear as they were in game, along with events being changed in ways that just don't particularly make sense. This had to happen. This was always going to happen. It was never going to be a full one-to-one adaptation of the game. You're trying to cram a 120-hour RPG into 26 episodes. But even still, looking back at the Persona 4 anime, they still handled that time pretty badly. Not to mention that it doesn't even adapt the entire game. It gets up to the climax and then cuts off and goes, well, wait on the OVA. I know you've got a lot of stuff to fit into there, but there's better ways to do it. You could have cut some episodes and merged some parts and ended up with a very solid adaptation of the entire game. And I don't know how they intend to fit 2 dungeons and multiple boss fights and an entire ending into one OVA, but I guess we'll find out soon. And unless the OVA somehow redeems its issues, I don't really know if I want to recommend this one or not. If you can play the game, you should. It's one of the best games of all time, I really do think so. Of course, it's got its issues, but everything does. If you can play it, you should. You absolutely should. But if you can't, I do think that watching the anime is still worthwhile. If you've played the game, I don't know if I would recommend the anime. It doesn't add anything to the story that is especially notable. In the Persona 4 anime, you had Yu Narutami being almost better than his in-game counterpart because it was absolutely hilarious. It was one of the funniest adaptations I've ever seen of it. The Yu in-game was a mostly blank slate for the player to insert themselves into and take the role of, even though some of his lines did sort of give you an idea of his personality. They didn't really try that with this one. Joker in cutscenes arguably has the most personality of any of the game protagonists. He's cocky, arrogant, he's overdramatic. That's part of who he is. They didn't really try to translate that very well. So at the end of the day, if you can't play the game, yeah, you should watch it. Otherwise, please do play the game. Oh, come on, we're like a third of the way through this list. Really, I already talked about most of the ones I liked. Alright, just had to let JoJo keep me going. Netflix is really killing it this year with anime, and in general, more specifically Daredevil. Can I talk about that instead of like half the other shows that are going to be on this list? I mean, it's from Atomic, that's close enough, right? No? Alright, fine. Adretsuto is probably one of the most unique anime I saw this year. Everything about it is, again, unique. I've never seen a show that looked like it I've never seen this exact sense of humor before in anime, and I've never seen one that sounded so much like how I felt during the Tokyo Duel portion of this video.
これだからこ仕掛けってやつはよ。なんか言った？
いえ、何も。
But unlike a lot of Japanese comedy, I actually really liked it. Maybe that's weird coming from someone who loves Gintama, but most comedy in anime doesn't really get to me. Adretsuto does though. It's hilarious. It's kind of hard to explain exactly why I like this so much without just showing you the show. It's really good. It's funnier than the majority of slice of life anime are. Its aesthetic works perfectly to the style of humor that it's going for. And coming as someone who actually does enjoy metal, that aspect wasn't lost on me either, and somehow it kinda added to the comedy. I don't really know why. There's not a lot to say really. I really liked the characters, all of the jokes pretty much stuck with me, and I really enjoyed it. Watch it.